Thank you all for joining us. It's my pleasure to welcome you to Northern Kentucky History Hour. I am your host for tonight, Mary Jane Calderon, joining you from my office at Behringer-Crawford Museum. Also joining me by the powers of Zoom is our guest presenter, Captain Alan Bernstein, with BCM's Curator of Collections, Jason French, and the museum's River Room on the third floor. So thank you, gentlemen, so much for being here.
Thank you for inviting me.
You're very welcome. Northern Kentucky History Hour is a project of Behringer-Crawford Museum, Northern Kentucky's history museum, that would not be possible without support. Thank you to all of our sponsors, including the City of Covington, Kenton County Fiscal Court, ArtsWave, Kentucky Arts Council, Northern Kentucky Sports Hall of Fame, the Carol Ann and Ralph V. Hale Jr. Foundation, and our members. If you're not yet a member of the museum, please consider joining for access to discounts and exclusive programming. Learn more and join at bcmuseum.org. We would love to hear from our viewers tonight. So if you have a question or comment to share, please type it in the chat or the Q&A feature, and I will be sure to get to those at the end of the presentation. Let's meet tonight's presenter. Captain Alan Bernstein began his river career in 1970 as a deckhand on the Delta Queen before founding BB Riverboats with his father in 1979. The company operates two U.S. Coast Guard inspected vessels, the Belle of Cincinnati and the River Queen. A key organizer of the first tall stacks in 1984, he holds multiple maritime licenses, including a 1,600-ton master's license. He played a pivotal role in creating the National Steamboat Monument on the Cincinnati riverfront, featuring the original paddle wheel from the American Queen. Captain Bernstein is active in the river industry, working alongside his two children, and has served in leadership roles with the Passenger Vessel Association, including as its president in 1988. He also spent over 20 years on the Northern Kentucky Convention and Visitors Bureau Executive Board and was awarded the National Rivers Hall of Fame Achievement Award for his lasting contributions to America's rivers. Now, before we get started, there is a quiz question tonight. So the first respondent to enter a correct answer in the chat on Zoom or Facebook Live wins a Northern Kentucky History Hour prize. And most importantly, bragging rights. Tonight's question is, what landing was the only landing available during the 1977-1978 winter when the Ohio River froze? So go ahead and get those answers in the chat. And I will stop sharing my screen. And Captain, if you're ready, you can take it from here. Thank you.
I'm ready. Good evening. My name is Captain Alan Bernstein, and I do hold three master's licenses, one for towing vessels, my 1,600-ton passenger vessel, and that's on the rivers, on the Western rivers. And my other one is in the country. I can operate anywhere in the United States, a 100-ton vessel. Now, tonnage to you doesn't mean much, but in the Coast Guard world, it means a lot. It basically, a 100-ton license allows me to operate any vessel under 100 gross tons. Tonnage is a mathematical quandary that you have to get through. It is basically volume of the space that the vessel has. Originally, it was for cargo, and that's how they came up with this calculation, and they used it for passenger vessels as well. My big license, obviously, is big enough to operate any boat on the Ohio River now. The Delta Queen was an unlimited boat, but it is not operating now. So the Belle of Cincinnati is a 1,200 ton, approximately 1,200 tons. So that's what the license differences are. It's not easy to understand, so don't feel confused. This is a history lesson, so I'm going to give you some history. back in the early 1960s. My father got out of his sales position and started a restaurant organization in downtown Cincinnati, and it was called Gregory's Steakhouse. That was our very beginning, 1962. I was a 10-year-old, and my dad said, "You're going to work on the weekends, and I'm going to teach you how to wash dishes and clean toilets, and you're gonna learn some basic things that you can take with you wherever you go and whatever you do at the end for your lifetime." I said, "Okay." And for a year, I washed dishes and I cleaned toilets. And he told me in the middle of all that, he said, "Alan, if you're going to go on in any industry, um, you cannot ask an employee to do something if you're not willing to do it yourself. It's very difficult to ask an employee to do something that you are not willing to do." And he felt very strongly about that. Um, he was he was a military guy. So he came from the Army. He served in World War II. Um, and that was sort of the way he was geared. And I remember going to his office sometimes. His desk was absolutely perfect. And he would have a pencil here and a pen over here and paper. And he would, when he wasn't there, I would sit down at his desk and I guess use a pen or a pencil or whatever. And he said, "Alan, I know you've been here in here today." And I said, "No, I don't think I've been in here." And he goes, "Yeah, I know you've been in here." And I said, "How do you know I've been in?" He said, "Well, the pencil I had was over here and it's been moved to over there. And I know that you did that." And I went, "Oh my gosh, what am I in store for?" But anyway, he was a real stickler for uh, certain things. And I assume that's the military way. I have not served in the military, but he did. And he had a lot of things in his thought process that were definitely military uh, driven. So we were in our restaurant very, very much. Gregory's Steakhouse was sort of what you would know as a Bonanza or a Ponderosa today. We were pre-Bonanza and pre-Ponderosa. And we were geared from a steakhouse in New York called Tad's Steakhouse. It was a big New York operation. And I assume there was a Tad's here in Cincinnati, but this particular gentleman that worked at Tad's befriended my father, and they sort of became business partners. And he ran the restaurant, and Dad sort of funded it. So this goes all the way through into the early 90s. So we had a really good run with Gregory's Steakhouse. In 1968, we bought El Greco restaurant in Southgate, Kentucky, here in northern Kentucky, which was going to be a Gregory's Steakhouse. But my mother and father, when they came to see the restaurant and got to know it real well, they said it would be a shame to take this really nice restaurant and make it into a Gregory Steakhouse, which was wood and sort of barn feeling. And they said, "Well, we don't think we can do that." And my mother was a very good cook. She knew cooking. I think her mother was a great cook, and so it was natural that we had different things from around the world, and they were all great. And so we, instead of making El Greco a steakhouse, we kept it as a white tablecloth restaurant. Beverly Hills Supper Club, if you remember that, is down the road, maybe a half mile. And Newport, of course, was just down the road. We were in Southgate, which is right after Newport, and right before Fort Thomas and Cold Spring. And so we got into El Greco, and it became a pretty instant success. It was an international cuisine type of restaurant. We featured my mother made just a great onion soup, French onion soup. My mother learned a shrimp ceviche dish from Ecuador, and we had Swiss fondue, and it was really a great restaurant with a great menu. And the people at that time on Route 27 in Newport and Southgate, and it became very, very popular. Now, part of that was my mom and dad, who were very interesting people. And my father and I did not get along as a youngster. The more as I grew up, I started seeing his mentoring and why he, like I said, he believed very strongly that I should not tell an employee to do something terrible or a job that was just terrible if I was not willing to. That was the kind of really background I got. And he was very hard on me, and I couldn't understand it. He would never be hard on the employees. It was always, Alan, you should have done it, or Alan, you did. And I just couldn't understand it. And I was young enough. I was, I don't know, 21, 22. So it was just hard for me to understand how hard he was on me, and the employees did okay. But I learned, and the older I got, the more I started to understand. And then, of course, I got married and had a little baby girl. My daughter, Terry, was just an angel. And I tell my son that he was lucky that she was first, because if we had him first, Terry wouldn't be here. He was just the opposite of Terry, the exact opposite. How sweet she was, it was how difficult could I be for my mother and father. He was just difficult, stubborn, wouldn't want to do so. We all wanted to go to dinner. He wouldn't want to go to dinner. I said, Ben, we're going to dinner. Just get in the car. We're going to dinner. We get to the restaurant and everybody ordered. Ben didn't know what to order. And he's a great kid today. He's absolutely a great son. He does a great job. He has a great son. My grandson. I have a granddaughter and a grandson, but his son is the grandson, and my daughter has a daughter, and of course she is the queen, or the let's see, she's the princess of the family, and will always be the princess. She just got her driver's license, so all of you out there in Northern Kentucky, just be careful. There's a young lady out there driving, and she's not a bad driver. I've had her out driving and parking, and so she's not bad. She'll be an excellent driver. Just get a little experience. So at El Greco, it became very, very busy, and my dad was serving on the Convention and Visitors Bureau, and at that time, this is in the mid 70s, 76. The Bureau was told that the Mike Fink restaurant was being sold to a New Orleans interest, and they were going to float the Mike Fink down to New Orleans. And the Convention and Visitors Bureau did not want the boat to leave. They thought it was an icon, and it was right in Covington, right. at that time, Riverfront Stadium, it was the round bowl that they did both sports in. And we were right across, Mike Fink was right across from that. And in 1976 to 1977, Dad ended up buying the restaurant because we couldn't get anybody else interested in it. So my father figured, well, the way to keep it here is we'll buy it. And we did. And it became an instant success. Of course, that was more of a river cuisine and more catfish and more river stuff than El Greco, and so we had two really totally different concepts. And at the Mike Fink, the reason or the main reason we got into the boat business is people would call the Mike Fink thinking, or they would see a picture of it and it was a boat, and the people thought that the boat left and came back. So the questions were, what time did the boat leave? What time does the boat come back? What do you serve? All those kinds of questions. And I said to Dad that I thought that with all the phone calls, there's just sort of a normal thing here for an excursion boat company. Oddly enough, Betty Blake, who was the president of Delta Queen Steamboat Company, and their offices were just over the river from the Mike Fink, she came quite a bit and became a very, very dear friend of my dad's and me. And she was a very dynamic lady, just a tremendous brain for river and steamboats and history. And I remember going to a lecture at somewhere, it might have been the museum, one of the museums, and she was this little tiny lady. I don't think she would reach 5 feet, maybe. Beautiful woman, well proportioned, and she just commanded. It was silence because they wanted to hear what she had to say, and it was a very interesting atmosphere because they were waiting on every one of her words about how she would sell for the Delta Queen and how she would get cities interested in having the Delta Queen come to their towns. And it was fascinating. So oddly enough, we had the Mike Fink, and we had Betty Blake, who came all the time. And my dad started to agree that maybe there was, and so Betty became a consultant, so to speak. She still worked for Delta Queen at that time, but her encouragement meant the world to us. And she connected us to a gentleman in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, at the very top of the river. And we got our first boat from that operation, and we brought it down to Cincinnati. It was called, at that time, the Gateway Clipper. That was the name of the boat. And we changed the name of the boat to the Betty Blake in Betty's honor. About a year into our business, Betty got very sick with cancer, and a very dark few months. She didn't live very long. And I believe she died at 54, which was really young. And her father was a Kentucky congressman, and that's sort of how she got connected to all of this. She was a very prominent congressman, and she sort of got that knowledge. And she and Bill Mustard from California saved the Delta Queen from extinction. And she and Bill worked tirelessly, just it's hard to tell you how hard she worked. Now, on the Delta Queen, one of my jobs, other than deckhanding and bussing tables and doing all that stuff, my job was at every port of call. I had to go get the scroll of names and got it out onto the public landing so people could sign the petition to save the Delta Queen. And during that, she would yell at me all the time, Alan, you're not fast enough. You've got to get that scroll out there at the very. I was always in the doghouse, but nevertheless, we got it, and Betty and Bill were really the two people that were able to save the Delta Queen. It still has an exemption. If you don't know, the Delta Queen is still down in Louisiana in the bayou, over by I think it's Morgan City. It's over that way, and it still has the exemption. The boat is not in great shape, but there's a group, and I'm certainly a part of it, trying to save the boat. But it is deteriorating fairly quickly, and without a good infusion of cash, it's probably going to rot away before it's usable, if we don't get it done. So now we have the Mike Fink, and we have El Greco, and just upriver from the Mike Fink was a place called Captain's Anchorage, and it had a floating radio station. WNOP was in cylinders that were welded together that floated, and a really interesting design. I don't know why they did it, but they did. And it was a real icon on the river. And then it had excuse me, it had WNOP across it, and it lit up at night. And there was a marina for about 30, 40 boats. And we ended up buying the Captain's Anchorage. And we changed that whole concept to at that particular time, I guess it's the early 80s, maybe the mid 80s. Crocodile Dundee was the big movie, and with the alligator vest, and his big knife and all that, and real popular. And so we the outback of the restaurant was called the Outback, and it was sort of featured like Australia and the alligator stuff, and the restaurant was called Crockett's River Cafe, and it featured more modern day food. So you could go to El Greco, which was sort of international. You could go to the Mike Fink and get river stuff, cuisine, and Crockett's was a much more modern. Yet it had a kitchen you could look into and see what they were doing, and the restaurant. And then upstairs was more casual, but it was a great upstairs. And we started growing, and now all of a sudden, I guess really before Crockett's, we started BB Riverboats. That was in 1979. I don't want to jump ahead too far here. 1979, we got a boat from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and called it the Betty Blake, and it was instantly successful. And if you're out there and listening, and you're hearing it was an instant success, it was an instant success, it was an instant success. That is sort of how it happened. And we were sort of overrun, not realizing that everything we did would be that way, but it was. And people loved the food and the atmosphere. BB Riverboats, as we know it, we're still very busy today. That's 40 whatever years ago. I lost track. BB has not really changed much. We're private charters. You can charter our boat for fundraisers or banquets or whatever. You can come on a public dinner cruise, lunch cruise. We do sightseeing. It really was just the beginning, and Betty was the one that told us, if you're going to do an excursion boat, do something for everybody. So you can have kids on board, you can have adults on board. A lot of times kids and adults don't match, but if they're with their parents or whatever, that seemed to be the way the excursion boat company was going to run. In our success, we ended up buying another boat in the second year of our operation. It was the old Becky Thatcher from New Orleans, Louisiana. We bought that in 1981, and we remodeled it in New Orleans. We finished it off in Paducah, and we got up to Chattanooga and painted the boat. And we were headed to the 1982 World's Fair. That was in Knoxville, Tennessee. If any of you remember that, it had the Golden Dome, and it was a very interesting World's Fair. And I don't know that there are World's Fairs today. Certainly not here in the United States. The last one I remember was in New Orleans in 1984, was the New Orleans World's Fair. And I think that's the last one in the United States. So we became the official riverboat of the 1982 World's Fair. I have a private collection of World's Fair junk. I mean, it was little souvenirs and tchotchkes and things that probably nobody else had or wanted. My son, Ben, says, just throw that whole cabinet away. You'll be fine. You'll be fine. I said, Ben, I can't do that. These are memories that you'll have of our year at the World's Fair. And you were born there. You didn't go to school there because you were too young, but your sister went to school there. And it's a good memory for you to have for your kids and all of that. And he said, Dad, take the cabinet and throw it away. Now, my daughter really thinks it's pretty neat. Now, I would not say that my tchotchkes are great, but some of them are. I mean, I have a Zippo lighter that has the World's Fair logo on it engraved, and it really very nice. I don't think it's ever been lit, but there's that, and we've had. I have a watch, a World's Fair watch. I think it's a Timex. Timex was back good in the 80s. It was still a real good. If you had a Timex, you were. What was it? It takes a beating and keeps on.
It takes a licking and keeps on ticking.
Yeah, that's what it is.
That's
exactly what it is. So I have a Timex watch with the World's Fair logo. But anyway, we have a great collection. I have a great collection. It's in our wharf down at the Riverboats. You can come and see it. And I have collected over the years many riverboats models. We certainly have a Delta Queen and several other boats. I have an Island Queen. All of our boats are in there. Our previous boats, we had models made. And it's a pretty interesting collection of boats. So there's several more restaurants to come, but I'm going to skip those because Cincinnati is going to have an event next year. I don't know how many remember tall stacks. We've had 6 of those previously. 1988 was the first one. 1988 was a city's bicentennial celebration, 200-year birthday for Cincinnati. And I was asked to be on a committee, and we were charged with coming up with an event, or maybe many events to celebrate the river. And we met and met and met. I mean, I bet it was a year. This is 1984. We were brought in as a group, and of course, the state of Ohio funded this celebration. So, and the Cincinnati event was one of 4 or 5 big celebrations, and then we had several. During that year, had several different events. There was a famous Cincinnati reunion where Doris Day, or my memory, there were a lot of Cincinnatians that became very famous and came back, and were a big part of our history. So we celebrated that. We had a 4th of July big celebration. We had a New Year's Eve celebration, and one of them was tall stacks. We were one of the major events of the year, and we didn't know what we were getting into. Even I, as an excursion boat operator, can't tell you how we thought that this was a good idea, but here's how it happened. We met for almost a year, and we had to report back in Columbus what Cincinnati was going to do for our part of the celebration. And we had to put a report together. In the last meeting, we put a report together that said we didn't really have one signature event, but we have a lot of ideas. And I said, you know what? We've met for a year. Why can't we come up with, And I said to Rick Greiwe, Rick's a dear friend. I said, Rick, what if I called some of my friends out of the blue and see if they would bring their boats to Cincinnati, and we could have boats from close around us, and that would be pretty neat. And he looked at me like, why didn't you say this a year ago? It was one of those reactions like, that's a great idea. Why are you bringing it now? So he said, do you think you can do that? I said, well, I can get on the phone. What can they say? No, that's the worst they can say. And so I called about 10 friends, and all 10 said they would be interested. And I really was surprised. And so I went to Rick and I said, Rick, I have an interest. What do we want to do now? I've got boats that said they will come here. And he said, well, let's get a group together and let's see how we can put this together. Now, this was 3 years before 1988. So we had the time, which we needed every day. And we finally put together a program. We were able to get funding to help defray the cost to get here. Fuel oil back in the early or in the mid 80s wasn't bad, but it was an expense, a big expense, and labor, and they had to leave there. And so he said, what list of boats do you have? I said, well, I've got St. Paul, Hannibal, Missouri. I've got St. Louis. I've got Pittsburgh. I've got Louisville. Chattanooga, Tennessee had a boat, and the Mark Twain and Hannibal, and a couple of other, Memphis, and he was just totally taken back. And he said, "Well, how did you do that?" And I said, to every question they said or asked, I said, "We'll take care of it. Don't worry." Not knowing what this would all mean at the end. Basically, I lied. I mean, that's really the basic story. But I just told them, "Don't worry about anything. We'll take care of it." And we did, and it was a very successful event. We did not know what we were doing. I fulfilled all my promises. I don't know how we fulfilled all my promises, but we did. And I remember on the stage the last night, they were singing patriotic songs, "God Bless America," and the fireworks were going off, and the Marine Corps band and the choir were singing, and everybody's crying. Everybody, the staff and all the girls that worked very, very hard. Everybody worked very hard, and they all kept saying, "We can't let this go." And we marketed it as a once in a lifetime event. So I didn't know what it would be if we all of a sudden had another one. That you don't have a once in a lifetime event, multiple times. So we got over that and ended up having 6, 88, 92, 95, 99, 2003, and 2006. And in that, after 2006, we tried several times, every 3 or 4 years, to put it together, but it just didn't come together. It was either money, or the economy wasn't doing well, or whatever it was. There was a lot of excuses. But in next year, in 2025, in October, the 8th through the 12th, we have 11 or 12, and there might be 13. We'll see what the end number is. Boats from New Orleans, the Natchez is coming up. Memphis is coming. We're dealing with the Quad Cities boat, the Celebration Belle in Moline. St. Paul is sending a big boat down. And of course, the Belle of Louisville and the Mary Miller, and a Pittsburgh boat. The Three Rivers Queen will be here. And we are going to celebrate the first event of our 2026 250th birthday of the United States. So we are going to bring these boats back. Everybody is very excited. You'll want to ride as many boats as you can either want to or afford. And I believe that this version of tall stacks is being called river routes because it's more than just the boats this year. In the past, it was really the boats that led the charge, and other things went around that. We had a Civil War encampment and all that. This year it is more about culture and music, boats, of course, and we're still the headliners. I mean, the music and food can't take up our space. It's the boats will definitely be the best part, but it will be a celebration, and I hope all of you can come down. And even if you don't want to ride a boat, the pictures are everlasting. The scenes during the day and the evening at dusk. We have 2 steamboats, the Belle of Louisville and the Natchez. And we are hoping to have a third, but we're working on that very hard. The Julia Bell Swain is the third. Now, those are the last three commercial steamboats left in the United States. So these boats are all in great shape. The Belle of Louisville is a relic that has been kept up like no other. I don't. The city of Louisville owns the boat, and you can tell because nobody individually could keep a boat that nice and that good privately. You'd have to have a lot of money. And the Belle of Louisville, we race every year in the Derby. We go to Louisville every year, and I can tell you, they are not honorable people down there. They lie, they steal, they cheat, any kind of thing. They've had me arrested, so I can't get on the boat. I mean, you just don't know what you're going to run into down there. And I've always tried to get ahead of them. And the mayor is mean to me. And I'm not a well-liked person in Louisville, but I always come home and feel good. Everybody's happy to see me. At least I'm not in jail down there. So riverboat racing, steamboat racing, it is not how fast your boat can go. Just take that out of the picture. It is decided by a panel of judges. Now we get two judges and they get two judges. And then the festival, the Derby Festival, has two judges. So I'm dealing with four judges that are home cooked judges. And I bring my two judges who are not home cooked. And it's always a 4-2 vote. I don't know how it works out that way, but we lose every year 4-2.
It's not fair.
No, it's just not fair.
It's not fair.
It is not fair. Now we have won the race, you know, the up and down and under the finish line several times. And last year, the mayor, I was shocked. I really was. Said, okay, the Belle of Cincinnati is declared a winner. And I almost fainted because normally he's the main guy that says, the Belle of Louisville's the winner. That's the way it is. So during this River Route celebration, we're going to have several races here. And Cincinnati, the Belle of Cincinnati and the Belle of Louisville are going to race here in Cincinnati. And we get four judges against their two. So, turnabout's fair play, in and around the time. But there's going to be a lot of on land stuff, a lot of music, 8 or 9 stages. I believe most are free, if not all. Well, I know one is going to be a main liner stage, and that will not be free, but there'll be music all around the festival. Covington, Newport, Cincinnati has 4 or 5 stages, and you'll be able to hear bluegrass music and country music and all kinds of cultural music that is really interesting. And my parting words here is that the steamboat originally was the way we discovered music and food and religion and culture, and because it came up from the South into the Ohio River, and we were able to hear New Orleans jazz music, and we were able to hear or eat and drink jambalaya and all kinds of food. And the steamboat was the only way to get around at that time. So you had to have, and the crew, of course, was all over from the river. So there was a very large cultural exchange, food exchanges, music, and really started the interest in our country in diverse things.
Yeah. Oh, it's the history of the deckhands would sing.
Oh
and
yeah, oh yeah.
all of that just kind of and there's such a strong river music tradition.
Absolutely.
So it's
Absolutely. It really is a neat thing that the river gave us, and nobody thinks about it today. Obviously, I'm attached to the river, so I do think about it and understand it. But it is really how this part of the interior of the United States started to understand what was going on all around the north, the south, even to the Great Lakes. There were a lot of connections, and that's just a tidbit. It wasn't a trivia question, and I don't know if I gave the answer to the trivia question.
I don't believe you did, but we
Yeah.
did have a correct answer. So I want to go ahead and repeat that question again for anybody
Okay.
to catch it. So that was what landing was the only landing available during the 1977-1978 winter when the Ohio River froze? And that answer was Mike Fink.
That's
So
correct.
congratulations to Robert. Your prize will be coming to you in the mail.
I was hoping Robert didn't answer it, and then I would get the prize because no one answered the right question, the right answer.
Oh, I see. I see. So Robert also had a comment, if I can find it here. He had said, hold on, let's see. Oh no, actually it was Mark. He said, I was associate director of the Northern Kentucky Community Center in the mid-90s. Bill Martin was the director. The Bernsteins were great to work with, and we had a few river cruise, fashion show fundraisers that were very successful.
And that is correct. I remember the community center. It was very nice, and we were happy to do it for them. Very happy.
We also had Patty said years ago the Cincinnati Covington area was full of boat restaurants. What happened? We are not using our Great River area wisely.
Well, the real reason, the real cause of that is that the river is not an easy place to do business. In Cincinnati, we go up and down like a yo-yo sometimes, and it's all Mother Nature driven. So there's no predictability. There's no, that if you're out in the atmosphere and it's raining, we might get a river rise. If it rains a lot, we definitely get a river rise. And sometimes it doesn't always concern us. They might get a lot of rain in Pittsburgh. And if you don't understand how water goes, it goes downhill and it finds its way along. And when it gets to be a amount that they can't handle, the river rises and the dams hold it back. Sometimes they try to control major floods, but a lot of times Mother Nature's in charge, and you don't mess with Mother Nature. Most of the restaurants today have gone on land. The Montgomery Boathouse didn't build on the river; they built on land, and they're on the river. They're just not on the river like we were. Hooters is still there. There's that beer cellar or whatever it's called is still there. BB Riverboats is certainly on the river. It's very difficult and very expensive to run a marine operation and keep the driftwood. There's all kinds of things that come down the river. Dead animals. There's cows go by all the time. They slip and slide into the river. Cows are not good swimmers. They will swim, but they're not good. They're not good swimmers. But that's just Mother Nature, and all the driftwood that is dead rises into the river and then starts to flow down the river. So it's a very difficult place to do business. And that's why. That's why.
All right. She also added that she really misses the Mike Fink.
Yeah. I am so sorry because I miss the Mike Fink every day. People tell me every day we miss the Mike Fink. It was a great restaurant. We had a great clientele, and I feel her pain. I miss it too.
And I'd like to add that Robert, who won our trivia question, he also commented that you could have his gift if you wanted it. I thought that was very sweet.
Well, that is very nice of him.
But don't worry, Robert, he'll get a
yeah.
prize regardless, just for being such a great presenter. So you can still have your prize. We also had Cindy and Woody Schuster said that they've attended and volunteered at every Tall Stack event and how it was a great time, fun time.
Well, I think the past 6 Tall Stacks, they averaged about 12 to 15,000 volunteers each event. So the city does get behind the event. It's a great city event. I will tell you and everybody else, it has not been done in any other city along the river system. Many cities have tried and have failed miserably. So Cincinnati is a very special place. A lot of people, my daughter and son would tell you that's because I'm here, and I will tell you that is not the case. If other cities wanted to do it, they could very, very well do it. But it's a huge effort. A lot of the behind the scenes stuff, very, 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 very difficult. But it's a lot of work, and not a lot of people are into really working hard today. But anyway, you live in a city that is the only one to date to ever put together a festival like Tall Stacks Riverboats.
That's pretty remarkable. I was going to ask what sets us apart, but maybe it is you.
Well,
I
don't think so. I have no secrets. I was not a great student. I'm not a genius. In fact, I would probably fail most GDEs or GEDs or whatever they are. But no, I have learned to work hard, and it doesn't bother me to work hard. And my kids, my daughter and son are just great workers, and my employees have a lot to do with this. We have probably 15 or so core employees that have been, unfortunately, we're getting old. I think all of us that have been there from the beginning are saying, when are we going to stop this? You know, it's a lot of work, but we're very fortunate. And I would say that the city has been able to do this because everybody's able to work together.
And you also have a podcast, is that correct?
Well, it's a family podcast. My kids, I was a guest invited on a podcast, and I can't remember. I should. I would plug it if I remember. But anyway, everybody heard it, and they go, this is great. We ought to do one for ourselves. I said, well, and my kids wanted to start getting me to write things down and record things, and just start so that my grandkids can know what their grandfather did, and the stories. Many of them are very, very funny. Some of them are not so funny, but they were things that made our company better. And it is a tribute that they wanted to do it. It was really Ben and Terry's. Even my wife thought that it would be a great thing. And Mary and them got together and they said, we'll organize it and just tell Dad to be there. And so that's what they say, what time and where. We even now have a studio in our facility where we do it, and we try to bring employees, ex-employees, people that we've had a lot of romances at BB over the years. We actually have people who are married and their kids are working for us, and it's a real rewarding thing, and I think it is worth preserving. So we do one every week. We talk about restaurants, we talk about stories. It's all kinds of things. So we're very, very proud of it.
I love that. That's so important to preserve that oral history. Just
Yep.
like.
Yep.
And how could anybody, or if anyone was interested in accessing that podcast, how would they do that? Do you know?
Oh boy. I believe it is podcast at bbriverboats.com. They can access it that way, or on any of the podcast, what is venue? I am not computer savvy. I told you earlier I wasn't computer savvy.
Right.
I should know that, and if they're interested and you can't find it, email me at BB Riverboats, A Bernstein, BERNSTEIN at BBRiverboats with an S.com, and I will get you the link, or maybe one of my employees will get you the link, and you can access it. It's a fun hour. I think it runs about an hour and 5 minutes, but it's a lot of fun, very interesting.
Well, thank you so much, Alan, for sharing everything with us. It's been a great presentation. You're a great storyteller. I love hearing your stories, and I'm sure the podcast is great.
It is, and thank you very much for inviting me. I'll come back anytime.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Jason, also for
Yeah.
your.
He didn't talk very much, but I mean, he was here. But that's all right. It's all right.
How about, well, you know what, Jason, what can you tell us about where you're sitting right now? You're in the museum in the river room. So what do you have sitting there with you? Maybe you could just mention those.
So actually, you know, we're here in our river room and a gallery that we currently have Harlan Hubbard artwork and model of his shanty boat here. And kind of as the backdrop, we've got this great photograph of the Delta Queen at the suspension bridge here in Cincinnati. And earlier when I was talking to Alan, he was telling the story of kind of how he got involved in the Delta Queen. But I also thought, well, shoot, you know, we've got this megaphone, and Alan, you had a story about your captain on the Delta Queen.
When I was on the Delta Queen, the captain, actually more for show than anything else, would bark all the orders on the megaphone, and it was magical. It really was.
So, you know, we just kind of brought some stuff here because I thought, well, we were going to have these wonderful stories about the river, and river boats, and you know, I certainly have lots of questions for Alan, and I'm hoping
we'll spend another hour or two answering questions.
Spend an hour here, and you guys will just have to tune into something future or a curator's chat.
Yeah, maybe a curator's chat. Coming soon. Okay, well, thank you both. For more Northern Kentucky history throughout the week, check out our Facebook page and our YouTube channel, where you can find the latest Curators Chat, along with all of our past Northern Kentucky History Hour presentations. Please like and subscribe. That's all we have time for this evening. Thank you again to all of our sponsors and supporters of BCM. Until next time, take care, everyone, and good night. Thank you, gentlemen.